Hello, hello, and welcome to the AP Lit live review session. We're excited that y'all are with us. Class of 2020, hanging in there. Tomorrow's my students' last day of school. Can you believe that? Their last day of high school. So wow, where has April gone? I'm Susan Barber from Atlanta, Georgia, Grady High School. Shout out, like I said, to my seniors because they are in their next to last day of high school, even though it looks completely different than what we thought. I also want to give a couple of shout outs. Miss Aguilar's class at Colony High School in Ontario. Hi to all of you. Glad you're with us. And also to Miss Atwater's class, Marshall High School in Missouri City, Texas. Glad you are with us as well. We're excited to jump in and talk about close reading today. Tomorrow we'll finish up and talk about writing. And that kind of winds up our content. We'll do some review, really like practice, some opportunities for you to like practice the test next week in a timed setting. We'll be offering that and we'll share more of those details with you probably tomorrow. Mr. Escobar, how are you today?
I'm doing great, like always. Carlos Escobar from Felix Varela Senior High School in Miami, Florida. Can't even remember my school's name anymore. It's been such a
Yeah.
long time since I go there. I'm happy to be with you all, and like Miss Barber said, we're talking reading today, we're talking writing tomorrow, and then next week we'll be practicing.
Mhm.
It's very important that you all keep updated. Make sure that you go to the college board updates. Make sure you check your emails.
Mhm.
Students, you have to log into AP Classroom. Make sure that all of your information there is accurate and correct. Make sure that the courses you're listed for there is accurate, because those are the courses for which you will be receiving e-tickets. These are going to be the tickets that you will need to click on in order to enter the exam platform. So if you think you're taking a test, but it's not listed in your AP Classroom, then you need to speak to your teacher, speak to your AP coordinator, because something has gone awry. So make
Mhm.
sure you check that out today.
Yeah, and the sooner the better for that. So go ahead, don't delay on that. Now is the time to take care of that.
And your homework yesterday was to look at Mayor of Casterbridge again and look at different shifts and repetitions and similarities, things that stand out. We wanted to make sure that you read closely and you read carefully. And today we're going to be talking just about those topics. So we're not going to go over the homework per se. We're going to dive right into the lesson. And what we want to show you here is, and this might mean more to teachers, but even students, I want you to focus on something at the top, the big ideas. This is something that teachers receive this year. This is the course and exam description sort of overview. And these are some of the reading components. We don't have the writing component up here because we're going to talk about that one tomorrow. But students, notice that we have talked about character and setting and structure and narration or narrator or point of view, things like that, and figurative language throughout all of these lessons. So if you have tuned in every day, if you have watched all these, you have done the homeworks, you have done the practices, you can rest assured that whether you are doing this for review, or if you're a student who is not taking the course, but you're taking the test for some reason, then you have indeed received some overview or coverage of anything and everything that might be included on the exam in terms of the skills that are tested. So that is the lesson overview, because we're doing reading today.
Yeah, so this is the stable wording of this prompt. In the following passage, Michael Henchard and his daughter Elizabeth Jane are reunited after years of estrangement. During their separation, Henchard is risen from a poor seasonal farm worker to a wealthy mayor of a small town, while Elizabeth has supported herself by waiting tables at a tavern. Read the text carefully, then, in a well written essay, analyze how the author uses literary elements and techniques to portray the complex relationship between the two characters. We've talked in the past about deconstructing the prompt. We have some information here at the beginning of this prompt. We know that they're estranged, they have been estranged, and now they are reunited. We know that the father has gone from being poor to being a wealthy mayor, while the daughter is still just busting it and waiting tables. So all of that is just useful information. We don't want you just like rushing through the prompt, because this is going to frame your reading. And then when we get to the prompt, you're looking at how does the author portray the complex relationship between the two characters. That's going to give you purpose and direction for reading. So we really want you to spend a couple of minutes thinking about the prompt. What background information do we have? What is our specific writing task? And all of that will guide your reading, and it will give you purpose for reading. So now, I'm just going to model. I took this passage and I'm going to model for you my thinking and my chunking of the text when I went through this. So again, we encouraged you to break the text down into smaller chunks to deal with it. I would say spend a couple of minutes with the prompt, read the passage once. Then, if you have any other questions about the prompt, you may want to revisit that. But after you read it once, you'll probably be able to figure out how to chunk or how to divide the passage into smaller parts. And then you want to reread the passage. Like, you can't just read it once. You need to read it at least twice. And I know it's so like it goes against what you're thinking, because you're thinking, I'm in this time setting, I've got to get to writing. But we really need to spend time reading and thinking, and then the writing comes so much more easily when we have spent time really closely reading. So we break it into chunks, and there's not a right or wrong number of chunks. Break it into chunks, and then we're going to take notes. You may annotate on, if you choose to print the prompt, you can annotate on there and make notes on there, or you may have a separate sheet of paper where you make notes on your different chunks. So here's the first chunk that I have. Now, one thing that I always think about as a reader is the beginning. Beginnings are so important. Endings are so important. So at the very beginning of this, one of the first words that stands out to me is enigma. That's just so interesting, like it's already a puzzle. It's already confusing from the very beginning. So that sets our tone here, one of kind of confusion, um, a puzzled tone type from the beginning. And now we've talked a lot about looking, we know they have a complex relationship. So I'm reading, trying to think, number one, how do I see this complex relationship? And number two, what different contrasts can I see? Because usually when I see things contrasted, that's going to help me understand the complexity in the relationship. So as I read through this a second time, I do see some contrasting things. At the beginning, Henchard, he, half carried to the point of affection with her. He seems glad to see her, but then the next morning on, his manner is constrained. So what is that about? Then we see like he has this coldness, and that turns into chiding. That's contrasted with her occasional pretty and picturesque use of dialect words. That contrast again. And so we go ahead back and forth. She is wishing to show him something. She wants this relationship with him, but he's speaking sharply to her and even insults her. Good God, are you only fit to carry wash to a pig trough? Um, so she's trying to please him. He's coming down on her. What is that about? And then we see her response. She reddens with shame and sadness and speaks back to him with a low, humble voice, kind of that, I mean, almost like she's been put in her place. But the end of this first chunk, her sharp reprimand was not lost upon her. And so she tries to change her action. So then, if I go to take notes on this, this might be what my notes look like. And I went ahead and told you some of the what that I noticed. And now I'm going to think about how. So I think about tone. It's an enigma, like it's perplexed, it's confusing. That's an interesting way to start a passage. Like, no, you know, we don't know exactly who has the upper hand right here at the beginning, even though it does become very clear. But that's where the passage begins. And then I look at like the selection of detail and the contrasting characters here, and I pull my evidence for that. But then we have to go to the next step. Why is all of this important? And I start speculating. Why? Why? Well, I think he wants a relationship with her, but is embarrassed by her. She is wanting to change her actions because she wanting to change her words, wanting to change almost who she is because she wants to get his approval. So when I think about this first chunk, a couple of things that I want to remind you of. Number one, pay attention to the beginning. Beginnings are important. What you notice about the beginning, what might that tell you about not only what's to come in the passage, but the tone that it sets for the beginning? And also, we all read with different experiences and we read with different eyes. So you probably read this passage and noticed different things. That is 100% fine. It's good actually, because there's not one right answer that we're going for. I tell you, I feel for y'all, this generation, like you're the standard test generation, and you've been told your whole life it's A, B, C, D, or E, and then you get to AP Lit, and it can be several things, you know? So we're not looking for one right answer. You're reading, you're looking at what do you notice? How do you see the author developing this? And then why is it important? So you really lean in to what you connect with in the text. We're all going to notice different things. And as a reader, Mr. Escobar can totally confirm this. I mean, we'll read several different approaches to this answer, and they're all right. You just have to be able to support and give commentary to why your claims, how you got to your claims. So I did want to show this, and I'm putting this up in the notes today because we've not really talked about tone. It's not in the specific skill set, but I use this in my classroom. I have a picture of this, and I'm not even sure where I first got this. I think from an AP training, but I love this because when you talk about tone, I want you to be like very specific with your tone. And this starts, you'll see this wheel, it starts with just, 6 different emotions, and then it's going to go out and lead you to be more specific. The more specific you can be when you're talking about tone, that will help you with your not only it'll help you with your analysis of the characters, it will also help you with your overall analysis of just the passage in general. So if you're writing about tone, you want to be as specific as possible. So let's look at the second chunk. So now we have this next chunk, and I chunked mine into 3 sections. Again, you may do different, and there's not one right answer. So now in this second,
Miss Barber,
yeah, go.
I got an email from a student, excuse me, asking me if they have to chunk the text. And
Huh.
no, the answer is no. You don't have to chunk the text. The idea behind this is that if you notice that there are natural, let's use another word, that there are natural units
Or
within the
shifts.
text, and that's where they're going to land on, right? They're going to land on the shift. If you see that something is moving, then you have what came before it and you have what came after it. So the whole idea behind our insistence on chunking is so that you work with more manageable amounts of text. And then you can really delve deeply. If you remember, to get the 4 points in that second row, you really need not just evidence and commentary, but very specific and developed commentary to that apt evidence. And a lot of times, Ms. Barber warned you guys yesterday, there's a lot of generalizations in these essays, and a lot of the generalizations come when students only look at the text as a whole. When students only lean back and look at the entire text and then draw these large conclusions, that's fine. That should be part of what you do in an essay. But the other part is what she's doing right now, which is looking closely and carefully at a specific part. And that's when you're going to start talking about the significance of a single word or a single image. And how does that word or how does that image really contribute to that larger picture that you were talking about before? So that's the notion behind chunking. And it doesn't have to be 2, it doesn't have to be 3, but whenever possible, you should definitely try to work with clusters of information instead of the entire text. There's going to be plenty of times when you have to draw a conclusion about the text as a whole. Like we said, that's a part of it. But when you're in your body paragraphs, you really need to be taking individual pieces and connecting it to the whole, as opposed to just reiterating those large conclusions.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that for me as a reader, and this is how I write essays with my students sometimes, I'll sit down and write with them. And this is how I approach reading and writing. When I can chunk a text, when I can look at there's a shift here, what am I shifting from? What am I shifting to? Then it's easier for me as a writer to establish my line of reasoning as well, which we know is so important. So when I break it down into these manageable pieces, I'm able to show either a progression of development ideas or a progression in character. And when I've done that, then my line of reasoning works out. So that's why we're encouraging you to chunk, to look for shifts, look for the before and the after or natural breaks in the text, and or maybe just think about smaller sections, whatever wording you want to use. But I think breaking it into manageable pieces helps you dive deeper. And like Mr. Escobar was saying, avoid these generalizations because we want to be very, very specific in our evidence and analysis. Okay, so here's my second part. And yep, you can go ahead. these are the things I noticed, Well, now we have this shift, like she is trying, she wants to um, change her behavior. So her father will not sharply criticize her. But now we shift to him and notice that, well, he's uncultivated. So why is he so critical? And it's interesting, before, now I notice, like in the first part, she was reddened with shame, but now he is described in almost the exact same words. He's reddened with angry shame for her. So those are some of the things I notice. Again, the how is the author doing this? Again, the contrast between the characters that's just continued through here. Why is this important? And so now I'm looking back at that evidence, and I'm looking back at their contrasting characters. Why do I think it's important? Well, some ideas that I have. Maybe he's overcompensating for his past. Maybe he's embarrassed. Maybe he's trying to be somebody he's not. And again, just as we were saying, think about shifts, think about contrast, and think about progression of ideas. And then finally, the last section is the end. Endings are just as important as beginnings. Here are some contrasts that I noticed. She is, she would go to the kitchen instead of ringing, so she would make Phoebe come up twice. I mean, she's really like doing kind things, but yet to him, it appears a small protruding needle rocks. Which suggested rather than revealed what was underneath his coldness. And then we have the ending part. So when I think about this section, those are some of the things I notice. The selection of detail again, and now I can really draw more conclusions as to why this is important. So when you're thinking about the end, are there any other shifts that you see? Is there new or surprising information at this point, and what can I learn from the end of the passage? So now I've read it a couple of times, I've worked with it, I've made some notes on it, and now I'm going to write my thesis. And actually, so I'll go back and relook at the prompt. What does the prompt say? And then I'm going to write my thesis, and I'm going to outline my body paragraphs. That is so important, to spend time outlining and thinking through your progression of ideas, how you're going to break your paper down to support your thesis. So here's a thesis. Actually, I wrote a thesis, and then a student sent their essay, and this was what this student wrote. So I am going to share this because it was better than mine. In this excerpt from the Mayor of Casterbridge, Hardy reveals the complex, and this is her whole intro, the complex, affectionate, yet shielded relationship between Elizabeth Jane and her father, Michael Henchard. So boom, right there, affectionate yet shielded. Have complexity right there. Both Henchard and Elizabeth Jane become entangled in their own different perspectives of the relationship. Elizabeth Jane believes that Michael's reprimands mean only that he despises her, and Michael dislikes that Elizabeth Jane has to live a low-class life, and reveals his love through reprimanding her, creating a barrier to emotional connection and understanding their relationship as father and daughter. So I read that, and I know, again, the thesis, this is the promise as to what the paper is going to hold. I read this thesis, I read this short intro, 3-sentence intro, and I know if this student delivers, which the student did, this is going to be a great paper. So then you'll outline your line of reasoning, and now you're finally ready to write. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So just to review this process, first, deconstruct the prompt. Spend a couple of minutes reading information on the context and know the specific writing task. Read the passage once, then reread and break in to sections. Well, I think I have that as number 3. So read the passage, break into sections based on shifts or obvious changes in the text. Number 3, reread. So you've read it once, you've figured out how you're going to break it down, reread and take notes. You may annotate on the paper if you're choosing to print, or you may take notes, but I do really feel like it's important to jot your ideas down. This just gives your brain a little time to process and to think. Just something about writing it down than trying to keep all of this in your head, then you run the risk of forgetting something that's really important. What do you notice? How does the author communicate it? Why is it important? Next, you're going to draft your thesis and outline your body paragraphs, and then just write your heart out. It is time at that point um, to show what you know. And this is what I know. If you have been diligent and faithful to just do a little practice every day. And I don't mean like since these videos started, but like from the beginning of the year, every time you show up in class and read closely, every time you show up in class and write a paragraph or write an essay, or maybe you're having a discussion with a classmate about something you notice, all of that is practice, and practice pays off over time. And it will pay off for you not only on exam day, because it will pay off for you on exam day because, this class is all about the test, but then it's not at all about the test because it'll pay off for you years and years to come because you're going to be a better thinker and a better communicator as a result of the work that you have put in all year in this class.
And
It's
that's so
muscle
important.
memory.
It really is. When I look at the people whom I respect, who I find interesting, they're all readers.
Readers are
The-
leaders.
yeah, absolutely. And it's not a cliche statement. It's the absolute truth. We're not just preparing you for a test. We're preparing you because these are the skills that are important for you to become a thinker and a leader eventually, like you said. And my God, you fall in love with a written word. Don't take it as this monumental task. Dive into it. When I know this year's exam, we don't have a poem, right? My students were concerned, am I going to understand the poem if we have the poem? And I said, regardless of what the poem is, you got to treat that poem as if it's your favorite. Someone out there
Mm,
loved it. Someone out there
mhm,
loved it enough to write it. Someone out there loved it enough to publish it. Someone out there loved it enough to put it on the exam. If you start
mm,
reading all the text like that, there's this richness to it. And if you find that richness, then you're going to write a heck of an essay. And I'm going to take this gratuitous. We have masters around us. We have masters living among us. We have writers like Marilyn Robinson, Margaret Atwood, Khaled Hosseini, who have written these characters and these
mhm.
settings and these rich novels. Yeah, maybe they should, I don't know, contact the College Board and join us for one of these videos and talk about why it's important. We have readers out there, right? We have, President Obama puts out a list every year.
Yeah.
Where's Obama now when we need you, right? Why are you? Because this is the question I would ask President Obama. Why do you read?
Mhm,
Right? You've accomplished all this stuff in your life. You could
mhm.
sit down and just watch Netflix for the rest of your time here. Why do you read? Why do you put out that list? I think that if students recognize why it is that grown people continue to read, then they're going to understand the value of of enhancing these skills and putting them into practice. So maybe we'll get an answer. I don't know about that, but we'll see.
Let's see. So again, today is just all about just not focusing on one specific thing, but focusing um, on everything. And really, honestly, I just believe like this is where your muscle memory takes over. You have done the work and you've done it in small incremental amounts all year. And now you just show up on exam day and you know what to do. You know what to do, and you're going to do it. 100% believe that. So tonight,
Tonight, you're not writing an essay.
yay!
Yay. You will be writing 2 essays next week, so prepare for that. But tonight we want to look at a new prompt. We've spent plenty of time with Casterbridge. We've spent plenty of time with Lidgate and Rosamond, and it's time to look at something new. So here we have Belinda. And this is the old prompt. Obviously, we haven't updated it because this is exactly what we find right now in AP Classroom and in AP Central. But you are going to be dealing with a 19th century novel, and we want you to read it carefully and annotate it. We want this to look like a jumbled mess by the end. Ideally, you're going to approach this the way that you will approach the exam. So if you're planning to print and annotate, then you're going to do that tonight. If you're not, if you're going to just jot down notes, then that's what you're going to do. And whether you're going to write line numbers on one side and then a note on the other, or you're going to use this chunking system of taking the 3 and then doing the what, the how, the why, whatever approach you're going to take, now is when you're going to put it into practice with Belinda. And then we're going to look at student samples in response to this. So it's absolutely important that you walk in tomorrow, walk in like they're walking into our classrooms, right? That you log in tomorrow and join us and with this passage well read and annotated.
As always, seniors, oh, I think we have Quill. I've not had time to look at this, but a friend of mine, Miss Adams from Oklahoma, she told me that she's been playing around with it and is really excited about all it has to offer. So I would encourage you to check it out. Again, students, teachers, it is a privilege to have you in our class. I know there's so many things you could be doing. So thank you for not only spending time with us, but for giving yourself some time to just escape just the monotony of every day and to use your mind, just to use your mind and to focus on being a better a better reader and writer. I think that goes far beyond choosing to be a better reader and writer, but I think it speaks to like the character of who you are when you're choosing to spend your time this way when you could be doing so many other things. So thank you for coming to our class today. Oh my gosh, Mr. Escobar, how I wish we could really all be together in one class. Wouldn't that be awesome?
We will someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seniors, love ya. See ya tomorrow.
Take care, everyone. Goodbye.